The heirs who would not bow. The empire of Varanth did not breathe. It burned. Not the wild, untamed burn of forest fire or lightning strike, but a controlled, deliberate inferno. A fire shaped by will, forged by conquest, sustained by power. From afar, Varanth looked like a star fallen upon the earth. Its towers rose impossibly high, their surfaces not stone, but glass-like crystal infused with dragon fire. They shimmered in hues of gold and crimson, catching the light of the sun and bending it into a permanent dawn. Even at night, the city glowed. Rivers of molten energy coursed through its veins, vast channels carved into the ground, filled with slow-moving streams of luminous heat. Bridges arched over them, elegant and sharp, as if sculpted by blades rather than hands. The air itself trembled. Magic, ancient and heavy, lingered in every breath. It clung to skin, seeped into bone, whispered of ages long before men built cities, before dragons ruled them. Because Varanth was not built by humans. It was claimed by dragons. And everything within it, every stone, every life, every whispered prayer, existed under their shadow. At the heart of the empire stood the palace. Not merely a structure, but a declaration. A fortress carved from obsidian and fire, its edges jagged like the teeth of some colossal beast rising from the ground. Vast wings of blackened stone stretched outward, forming spires that seemed to pierce the heavens themselves. And at its center, the throne of embers. The throne was not crafted. It was born. Forged in an age when dragons did not rule from behind walls, but from the battlefield itself. It had been shaped from the cooled heart of a fallen star, its surface veined with faint, glowing cracks that pulsed like a heartbeat. Even now, centuries later, it radiated heat. Not enough to burn, but enough to remind. Power was never cold. Upon that throne sat the Dragon Emperor. Silence dominated the Great Hall. A silence not of peace, but of weight. Hundreds filled the chamber, yet none dared speak above a whisper. Even breath seemed measured, careful, as if the air itself might judge them. They were gathered in ranks. Generals clad in armor that shimmered like scales, their expressions hardened by countless campaigns. Nobles adorned in silks threaded with gold, their eyes sharp with ambition. Dragon lords, ancient beings who had survived centuries, stood like living monuments, their presence alone enough to crush lesser wills. And all of them knelt, their heads bowed low, their bodies bent in submission. Because before them was something none dared defy. The Dragon Emperor did not simply sit upon the throne. He filled the space around it. His wings, vast and folded, rose behind him like a second throne, layered, powerful, immovable. Each scale caught the light differently, creating an illusion of shifting flame across his form. Time clung to him. It showed in the faint scars that marked his scales, in the heaviness of his gaze, in the quiet, terrible certainty of someone who had never lost. His eyes burned, not with wild fires, but with controlled devastation. A flame that knew exactly what it could destroy and chose when to do it. He had ended wars with a word, burned kingdoms to ash with a thought, raised Varanth from a fractured land into an empire that spanned beyond horizons. And now, he waited. Before him, the court held its breath. Because something was wrong. Not all heads were bowed. At the base of the throne, just beyond the line of kneeling nobles, one figure remained standing. Still, unmoving, unbowed, the heir, Prince Kael Varanth. He should have looked like a reflection of the Emperor. That was what the court expected. What they demanded. What they had whispered about since his birth. But he did not. Where the Emperor was vast, Kael was still growing. Where the Emperor radiated power, Kael seemed to hold it back. His wings, though strong, were not yet fully formed. Their edges lacked the sharp, lethal definition of age. His horns curved upward, but not with the commanding presence of a seasoned dragon. They spoke of youth, of something unfinished. Even his scales, they shimmered, but not with the same overwhelming intensity. There was something softer in them, something that did not belong. And his eyes, that was where the difference truly lay. They did not burn. They watched, quietly, carefully, not the gaze of a ruler surveying subjects, but of someone searching. as if there was something hidden beneath everything he saw, something only he believed existed. The Emperor's gaze settled upon him. Heavy, unyielding. Rise, my son. His voice rolled across the hall like distant thunder. It did not need to be loud. Power never did. Kale did not move. The silence shifted. Not broken but tightened, like a blade being drawn slowly from its sheath. A noble kneeling among the others dared to whisper. The heir shows disrespect. Another voice followed, quieter but sharper. A weakness. The words lingered. Ugly. Dangerous. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Arise. The command carried weight now. Not just authority. Expectation. Slowly, Kale moved. He straightened, lifted his head, stood fully before the throne. But he did not bow. The reaction was immediate. A ripple of shock moved through the court, subtle but undeniable. Shoulders tensed, heads shifted. A few dared glance upward before quickly lowering their gaze again. This was not defiance. This was something worse. Disobedience. The Emperor watched him, unblinking. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, Kale spoke. I will not take the thrones. The words fell into the hall like a stone into still water. And then, everything shattered. Laughter broke first. Sharp, cold, disbelieving. A counselor lifted his head, unable to contain himself. You will not, he echoed, a grin twisting across his face. You are born to it. Another voice followed, louder. You are forged for it. Murmurs spread, growing in confidence. Ungrateful, arrogant, deluded. But the Emperor did not laugh. He did not move. He simply watched. Explain. The word cut through the noise. And the hall fell silent once more. Kale's gaze shifted. Not to the Emperor's, but outward. He looked at the court. At the gold-threaded robes. At the polished armor. At the jewels that caught the light and reflected it in dazzling patterns across the walls. He looked at power. At wealth. At control. And then, he looked past it. Beyond the towering pillars. Beyond the grand halls. Beyond the palace itself. To rule, he said quietly, you must see your people. The words were soft, but they carried. A murmur rippled through the court. We do see them, a noble snapped, lifting his head just enough to glare. They serve the empire. They provide, another added, labor, tribute, loyalty. Kale shook his head. Slowly. No. The word landed harder than his first. You see what they give you. His gaze moved again. This time to the great doors at the far end of the hall. Massive, sealed, guarded. Not what they are. Silence. This time it was different. Uncomfortable. The Emperor's wings shifted. The subtle movement sent a ripple of heat through the air. You speak as though you understand them. Kale did not hesitate. I don't. That was not the answer anyone expected. The Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. Then why refuse what you do not understand? Kale met his gaze. For the first time. Fully. Because ruling without understanding, he said, is not ruling. A pause. It's control. The word lingered. Sharp. Unforgiving. A general rose slightly from his kneel, unable to hold back. Control is strength. Kale's gaze flickered toward him. No. Then back to the throne. It's fear. The hall tensed. Danger crept into the silence. For a moment, it felt as if the very air might ignite. But the Emperor did not lash out. Instead, he leaned forward. Slightly. Then go. The words struck harder than any roar. Shock rippled through the court. Heads lifted, eyes widened. Even the generals shifted. If you believe you understand this empire, the Emperor continued, his voice calm, too calm, walk among it. A test. Or a sentence. Leave the palaces. The words echoed. heavy, final. Return only when you understand what it means to rule. Silence followed. Thick, suffocating. A general older than most spoke carefully. And if he fails, the emperor did not look at him. Then he was never worthy. No angers, no hesitation, just truth. The weight of it settled over the hall. Kale stood still. For a moment, it seemed as though he might argue, might protest, might refuse, but he did none of those things. Instead, he bowed his head, not in submission, but in acknowledgments. Then he turned. The court watched, every eye now fixed upon him. The great doors loomed ahead, closed, massive, unyielding. For generations, they had only opened for conquest, for war, for victory, never for departure. As Kale approached, the guards hesitated, just for a moment. Then, they moved. The doors opened. Light poured in, not the controlled glow of the palace, but the raw, unfiltered light of the world beyond. Dust drifted through the air. Sound followed, distant, unrefined, alive. Kale stepped forward. He did not look back. Not at the thrones, not at the courts, not at the life he was leaving behind. He walked, and the doors closed behind him. The sound echoed. Final. Inside the hall, no one spoke, because no one knew what had just begun. And no one's, not the nobles, not the generals, not even the emperor himself, expected what would happen next. The man no one saw. The lower city did not burn. It endured. There was no brilliance here. No towering spires of crystal or gold. No rivers of molten light to illuminate the streets in a permanent dawn. The glow that filled this place was dull, faint, flickering, and hard-earned. Fire came from furnaces, from forges, from oil lamps that struggled against the choking dark. Smoke filled the sky, not the clean, radiant flame of dragonfire, but thick black clouds born of labor. It rolled across the rooftops in heavy waves, blotting out the sun, turning day into something dim and gray. Breathing here was different. Each inhale carried weight. Each exhale tasted of ash. The sounds were different too. Metal rang against metal. A relentless rhythm. Hammer striking steel. Agains, agains, agains. Voices rose, but not in command. Not in authorities. Not in pride. They rose in survival. Shouted orders between workers. Arguments over scraps. Warnings of falling beams, broken carts, shifting loads. Pain had a sound. So did exhaustion. And here, they were constant. This was Varanth. Not the empire sung of in the palace halls. Not the shining dominions spoken of in proclamations and victories. This was the part no noble described. Where humans lived, worked, bled, and often were forgotten. Kale walked among them, unseen. His wings were hidden beneath a worn cloak bound tightly against his back. The fabric was heavy, rough, and unfamiliar. It scratched against his scales, clung to him in ways that felt restrictive. But it concealed what needed to be concealed. His presence was masked. The natural aura of a dragon, the quiet pressure that made lesser beings instinctively bow or retreat, was suppressed. Forced inward. Buried. To them, he was nothing. Just another traveler. Another body in the crowds. Another life passing through without consequence. At first, they avoided him. Not out of recognition, but instinct. There was something about him. Even hidden, even restrained, something lingered. A presence that did not belong. Dragons meant power. Power meant danger. And danger was something the lower city understood too well. So they stepped aside. Eyes lowered. Movements careful. But Kale did not command. He did not demand space. did not expect obedience, did not even speak. He listened. He watched. Days passed. At first, everything felt distant, like watching through glass. He saw the movement, the struggle, the endless motion of people working, carrying, surviving. But it did not touch him. He was observing, not understanding. Then, something changed. It started small. A child stumbled. Kale saw it. A boy no older than perhaps 10, carrying a bundle of scrap metal nearly half his size. His arms trembled. His steps faltered. And then, he fell. The metal scattered across the ground with a harsh clatter. The boy froze. Not from pain. From fear. A man approached fast, angry. Words were shouted. Harsh. Sharp. Kale did not understand them all. But he understood enough. The boy apologized. Again. And again. And again. The man did not listen. He struck him. Not hard enough to kill. Not even hard enough to cripple. But hard enough to remind. The boy gathered the metals. Hands shaking. Eyes lowered. And went back to work. Kale did not move. But something inside him did. The days stretched. And the scenes repeated. Workers collapsing where they stood. Only to be dragged aside. Replaced. Forgotten. A woman arguing for fair pay. Only to be laughed at. Guards walking through the streets taking what they wanted. Food. Coins. Respect. No one stopped them. No one could. This was the empire. Not the throne room. Not the court. Not the carefully constructed illusion of power and order. This, raw, unfiltered, unseen, and for the first time in his life, Kale began to understand what he did not know. Then, he saw him. It happened without fanfare, without significance, without any reason at all, which was exactly why it mattered. The janitor stood near the outer district of the palace, close enough that the golden towers were visible above the smoke, but far enough that their light never reached the ground. He was sweeping. Not dirt. Not debris. Water. The street had flooded from a broken pipe, forming a shallow pool that stretched across the walkway. People avoided it, stepped around it, ignored it, but the old man swept it aside, slowly, patiently, redirecting the water into the cracks along the street, guiding it away from the path where others walked. It was a pointless. The flow would return. The water would rise again. And yet, he continued. Kale stopped, watched. There was nothing remarkable about him. He was old. His back bent slightly with age. His movements slower than those around him. His clothes worn thin, patched, and repatched until the original fabric was barely visible. His hands were rough, calloused, his face lined, marked by years of work, of strain, of survival. And yet, he smiled, not broadly, not loudly, but constantly, a quiet, gentle curve of his lips, as if something within him refused to break. Kale did not understand it. He returned the next day, and the next, and the next. Each time, the man was there, cleaning, sweeping, fixing small things no one noticed, straightening a fallen sign, clearing broken glass from a path, helping someone lift a cart stuck in mud. No rewards, no recognitions, no raisins, and still, he smiled. One evening, rain began to fall. Not sudden, not violent, but steady. A quiet sheet of water descending from the gray sky, soaking the streets, turning dust to mud, washing the city in cold silence. Kale found him again. Sweeping. Water pooled across the walkway once more, gathering faster than before, spreading wider, deeper. The old man pushed against it, redirecting, guiding, fighting something he could not stop. Kale stepped forward. Why? The word cut through the reins. The old man looked up, surprised. For a moment, he simply stared. Then, he smiled. Because someone should. Kale frowned. The answer made no sense. It changes nothing, he said. The man chuckled. A soft sound. Warm. It changes something. Kale looked at the waters. At the endless rains. It will return. Oh yes. It will flood again. Oh yes. Then why do it? The man rested on his broom for a moment. Because for a little while. He gestured to the cleared paths. Someone won't slip. Kale said nothing. He stayed. At first he told himself it was curiosity. Observation. A continuation of his task. But that was not entirely true. There was something here. Something he did not understand. And he wanted to. Days passed. Then more. Kale began to help. At first awkwardly. His movements were too precise. Too controlled. Too careful. He lifted too much. Carried too easily. Worked without the strain others showed. It drew attention. So he learned. To slow down. To struggle. To appear human. The old man noticed. Of course he did. But he said nothing. Only smiled. And shared what little he had. Food. Small portions. Barely enough for one's. Yet always split in two. Why help me? Kale asked one night. They sat beneath a broken awning, sheltering from the wind. The rain had stopped, but the cold lingered. You looked like you needed it, the old man said simply. Kale frowned. I'm not one of you. The man shrugged. Hungry is hungry. Kale had no answer. And slowly, without realizing it, he began to change. He laughed. Not loudly. Not often. But once. At something small. Something simple. And it startled him. He listened. Not to learn. But to understand. He noticed things. The way people shared what little they had. The way they helped each other when no one else would. The way they endured. Not because they were strong. But because they had no choice. And somewhere along the way, the distance between him and them began to fade. Then, the night came. The air was thick, heavy, not with smoke, but with something sharper. Tension. Kale felt it before he saw it. A shift, a wrongness. The old man was working late, cleaning near the edge of a narrow street. Alone, that was when they arrived. 3 guards. Their armor marked them clearly. Imperial. Their steps were uneven. Their voices loud. Drunk. They laughed as they approached. Look at this, one sneered, still working. The old man said nothing. He kept sweeping. Another kicked the bucket beside him. Water spilled. The third knocked the broom from his hands. Worthless, he spat. The word hung in the air. The old man bent, picked up the broom, said nothing. That was when the first strike came. A fist, vast, hard. It connected with the side of his face. The old man fell. Kale moved. Instinct. Not thought. Not decision. Reaction. Fire surged beneath his skin. It rose. Vast. Violent. Ancient power coiled deep within him, responding to threat, to injustice, to rage. His vision sharpened. His breath slowed. His hands clenched. He could end this. In an instant. They would not even see it coming. Then, a hand rose. Weak, shaking, but steady. No, Kale froze. The old man lay on the ground. Blood at the corner of his mouth. Eyes tired, but calm. No, he repeated. The guards laughed. Look at him, one said, can't even fight back. They left, still laughing. Silence followed. Kale stood there, breathing hard, hands trembling. The fire within him, still burning, unspent. You could have stopped them, he said. His voice was tight, controlled. Barely. The old man wiped the blood from his lips. Oh, yes. Kale stared at him. Then why didn't you? The man looked up and met his gaze. Not with fear, not with awe, not with recognition, but with something far more unsettling. Understanding. Because, he said softly, power that answers every insult with force. He paused. Becomes the very thing it fears. The words struck deeper than any blade. Kale felt it. Not physically, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere he had never looked before. Something shifted. Uncomfortable. Unsettling. Drew, for the first time in his life, the heir of the Dragon Emperor did not feel powerful. He felt small, and for the first time, he did not hate that feeling. He stayed, not because he had to, not because he was commanded, but because he was not finished learning. And perhaps, for the first time, he had finally begun. The embrace that changed an empire. The summons came at dawn. Not with trumpets, not with ceremony, not with celebration. It came quietly. A message carried through the palace halls, whispered from chamber to chamber, passed between servants, guards, and officials with careful urgency. The emperor calls the court. That alone was enough. Because the emperor did not call the court lightly. And this time, everyone knew why. The heir was returning. The palace stirred. Servants rushed through corridors of obsidian and gold, lighting braziers, polishing floors already spotless, adjusting banners that had not moved in decades. Guards took their positions in perfect formation, armor gleaming, expressions carved from discipline. Nobles arrived in waves, draped in their finest attire, silks woven with fire thread, jewels that glimmered like captured stars, masks of composure carefully crafted to hide their anticipation. And beneath it all, a current of tension. Because something had changed. The heir had left. That alone was unheard of. But he had not returned. Not for weeks. Not for months. Long enough for whispers to grow. He failed. He fled. He will not return. Some hoped it. Others feared it. But all understood one thing. If the heir returned unchanged, there would be consequences. The great hall filled. Once again, the same chamber that had witnessed defiance now held its breath in expectation. The throne of embers burned at the center, its faint glow pulsing like a living heart. And upon it, the Dragon Emperor, unmoved, unchanged. He sat as he always had, silent, vast, inevitable. His wings folded behind him like the shadow of a storm. His eyes burned with the same controlled fire. But something in the air was different. Waiting, not for obedience, but for proof. The heir returns. The words spread like a spark. The great doors began to open. Slowly, light poured into the hall, stretching across the polished floor, cutting through the shadows. Dust followed. Wind. The scent of something unrefined. The court straightened. Expectations rose. They imagined armors. Dragon-forged steel. Wings spread in dominance. Power restored. Authority reclaimed. The heir returned as he should be. But what entered was not what they expected. Kale stepped through the gates. Alone? No, not alone, but without what mattered to them. No armors, no escort, no display of power. His clothes were simple. Worn, dust clung to the fabric. Mud marked the edges of his boots. His cloak, once used to hide, now hung loosely around him, no longer concealing, but revealing. He looked less, not diminished, but stripped of everything the court valued, everything they understood. And beside him walked a human. The reaction was immediate. Shock, confusion, then outrage. "What is this?" a noble demanded, rising halfway from his kneel before remembering himself. "Remove that human," another snarled, his voice sharp with disgust. "He defiles the court." The words spread. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to anger. A human's in the throne room, walking beside the heir, unbowed, unchallenged. The old man hesitated. Every step forward felt wrong. The weight of eyes pressed against him from every direction, sharp, judging, dangerous. He did not belong here. He knew it. They knew it. His clothes were plain, his posture humble, his hands rough and worn. He stood among dragons, and he trembled. But Kale did not slow. He did not look back. He walked, straight, unwavering, toward the throne, past the whispers, past the anger, past the judgment. Each step echoed, not loudly, but clearly. The court parted, not willingly, but instinctively, because something about him had changed. He reached the center of the hall and stopped. Silence fell, heavy, expectant. A general rose. "Bow," he commanded, his voice sharp, directed at the human. The old man froze. His instincts screamed at him to obey, to kneel, to lower himself, to survive. He began to bend. "No." Kale's voice cut through the moment. Calm, certain. The old man paused. Confusion flickered across his face. Fear followed, but he did not move. A ripple of anger surged through the court. Insult, disrespect. This cannot be allowed. Kale turned, not toward the throne, but toward the man beside him. For a moment, everything slowed. Then, before the entire empire, the Dragon Emperor's heir stepped forward and embraced the janitor. The world stopped. Gasps shattered the silence. Outrage followed like thunder. "You disgrace your blood. You shame the throne. This is weakness." Voices rose. Anger ignited. The fragile order of the court threatened to fracture. But Kale did not move. He did not release him. The old man stood frozen, arms at his sides, eyes wide, uncomprehending. He had never been held like this. Not here, not anywhere, not by someone like this. This. Kale's voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. "Is the empire." The words landed, not as command, but as truth. The court faltered, just slightly. "Enough." "He has nothing," Kale continued. His arms tightened not in restraint, but in recognition. "No titles, no powers, no voice." The old man swallowed. The words felt too heavy, too large, too much. And yet, Kale's voice steadied. "He gives." Silence followed. Not empty, but full. Kale lifted his gaze. Toward the throne. Toward the emperor. "I was taught that strength is fire." His voice carried now. "That power is control. That rule is fear." Each word echoed, not just in the hall, but in the foundations of everything they believed. "But he showed me something greater." A pause. Care. The word felt wrong. Out of place. Too soft. Too fragile. And yet, it did not break. "An empire does not stand because we are feared," Kale said. "It stands because someone chooses to build it." His gaze shifted. Not to the nobles, not to the generals, but to the unseen, even when no one is watching. Silence, heavy, unavoidable. The emperor moved. Slowly, he rose. The motion alone shifted the air. Power rolled through the hall like a gathering storm. Every instinct screamed. Every presence bent. This was authority. Unquestioned. Unchallenged. Absolute. You would place a janitor above kings. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Kale met his gaze. Unflinching. No. The answer came without hesitation. Without fear. He released the old man, but did not step away. Did not create distance. Did not return to what was expected. I would build a kingdom. His voice was steady, where even a janitor matters. The words hung in the air. Simple, impossible, dangerous. The emperor studied him. Long, unblinking. The hall waited. For judgment, for fury, for fire. Then, something shifted. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Emperor stepped down from his throne. The movement sent shock through the court. This did not happen. This was not tradition. Not law. Not orders. This was change. He descended the steps. Each one deliberate. Measured. The sound echoed. A countdown to something no one understood. He approached. Not the air. Not the court. But the humans. The old man trembled. Every instinct screamed at him to kneel. To hide. To disappear. He could not. He could not move. The emperor stopped before him. Close. Too close. And then, he looked. Truly looked. Not past him. Not through him. Not above him. At him. For the first time in his life. The emperor saw. What is your name? The question was quiet, but it shattered something far deeper than any command. The old man swallowed. His voice shook. Larens. The emperor nodded. A simple gesture, but one that carried more weight than any decree. Then, he turned. The air has returned. The court straightened. Tension coiled. And he has learned. Silence. A pause. Prepare the coronation. Shock rippled through the hall. Uncontained. Unstoppable. This was not expected. This was not understood. This was not. And brings. The emperor's gaze flickered. Just briefly. Toward errands. Our peoples. The words echoed. Not nobles. Not generals. People. The meaning struck. Slowly. Deeply. As the court struggled. To understand. To accept. To adapt. The heir stood beside a janitor. Not above him. Not apart. Beside. And for the first time, the empire did not feel like a fire. It felt like something else. Something quieter. Something stronger. Something that could endure. And far beyond the palace walls, where smoke still filled the sky, where hands still labored, where lives were still lived unseen, change had already begun.